All right, everybody. We're going to try and get this thing kicked off to keep things on time. We've got Heather Paxson, who's a GIS specialist with the City of Raleigh's GIS, and Diane Saunders, who's a GIS analyst with Wake County Government. They're going to give you a little talk here about the Raleigh-Wake MAR in action. So I'll let you take it away, ladies.
Thank you, Ray. Appreciate that. So I want to get a sense of who the audience is. So raise your hand if you live, work, or play in Wake County. So, I'm talking to a hometown crowd. So great. Do any of you that work in other counties, other areas, currently have an address repository? Anyone? Okay, good. Anyone, is this one of your goals that's coming up soon to develop an address repository? You're just repository curious. So, all right, thanks. So Heather's going to talk a bit about some of the history, and then I'll end up talking about what's coming ahead. So, take it away, Heather.
Okay, so addresses are one of our most critical, fundamental, and universal data sets a local government manages. It's one of our primary links to citizens, businesses, customers, and our constituents. Addresses can be difficult for an organization to manage across departments and jurisdictions due to differing needs and uses and options for handling multiple business systems, both independent and or proprietary databases. So a centralized and authoritative source for addresses can solve the problem of duplicated addresses and address management activities and enhance the usefulness of addresses. So as of January, the beginning of this year, we are up to 1.3 million people in Wake County. So our state capital is Raleigh, and we have 15 jurisdictions within the county. And as of right now, within this, we've got over 700,000 address points as of the beginning of this month. So what are we going to do with all these address points? So one of the things we have that basically curates it is the multi-jurisdictional address repository, or the MAR, which is a centralized authoritative database collaboratively managed by the City of Raleigh and Wake County. So basically my agency, the City of Raleigh, and Diane's agency, Wake County GIS, have a long history of collaboration since the 1980s. We've jointly created and maintained IMAPs, an online mapping and information tool. For the MAR, each of us started projects using the same consultants. Raleigh's funded started in 2012 for their jurisdiction. It was expanded in 2014 to include the towns served by Raleigh Water Public Utilities. Wake received funding in 2015 for the remainder of the county. In 2018, we entered a formal agreement and merged the databases. The data is currently hosted in Wake County, and we work together to refine workflows, solve problems, and plan improvements through bi-weekly meetings. So some key points for the history of the MAR is that in October 2020, the MAR went live. It was uploaded to NextGen 911 in 2022. It was added to IMAPs in 2023, and starting in 2024, it is now available on the open data site. So this, most crucially about this is that with all this, merging the data together, this project was undertaken without hiring additional staff and during an era of high development and population growth. Okay, so we have some metrics here, basically with our enterprise MAR, and you can kind of see that we're constantly having new addresses based on the calendar years. There's lots of edits going on, from changing addresses to retired or potential. We're adding new streets all the time and adding new street names. And again, that is the average for everything for calendar year 2024. So again, this is our primary source for that 700,000 address points. So how does the MAR work? The MAR is based on a non-spatial Oracle relational database integrated with spatial data in the SDE, allowing synchronized spatial edits and enabling efficient updates by multiple jurisdictions. The MAR is comprised of both an Oracle database, which stores the address data in a relational database format, and the supporting layers within GIS. A custom Esri extension manages links between the database and the GIS. Administration tables support user, field mappings, and agency georeferencing configurations. So, since we can actually use the MAR for certain things like permitting or the City of Raleigh Public Utilities, which services other municipalities besides Raleigh, For example, I've got the permitting, screenshot of permitting right there. So basically, when anybody tries to do a permit, it has to be for an address that is already active in existence within Wake County. So this eliminates any sort of false addresses or using any addresses that are currently retired. Okay, so this is IMAPS, and again, I've mentioned before that we use MAR data within the IMAPS now. So basically, with each of the properties, you can see, when you scroll down, you can see any sort of active address points, what the address is, including sub-addresses if it's relevant, such as suites, and basically the type. And again, if you click on any of these, it will go to the spatial location of the point. So besides public utilities and permitting and parcel linked with parcel data, it's also used for different apps within City of Raleigh and Wake County. For example, on the right, we have the Rabies app that was created for the Wake Animal Control to canvass the area where a rabid animal was found. Homes were visited in a buffer area to determine if pets were up to date on their rabies vaccine. So the data is ready for Luca. And residential points are easy to filter, and we've just added a new feature type, group quarters. It's also ready for the biannual population counts by the county demographer, who has been using the parcel address data. Also looking for the potential of using MAR for the Wake County permitting, and hope to use it for CAMA during the next rewrite of the system.
Thanks, Heather. So the uses you've seen so far are for the City of Raleigh and Wake County applications. The uses are now expanding beyond our projects. So when we created this database, we gathered address data from as many departments and agencies that we could find. And we are working with users now to find the most efficient workflows for adding new addresses, editing what's there, and accessing this data. We're available to answer questions and link users to other users that are doing similar work. So NC1 map now has the point layer from the Next Gen 911 project, so that data flows from NG 911 and is available in NC1 map. So, and that's a limited data set. So it's the data set of active address points for buildings. The Esri geocoding service is now using our points. So what you see on the right is a screenshot from our damage assessment app, which is part of the search and rescue app supported by NC Emergency Management. So, and here an address was typed in, and the pointer went to the correct apartment building in the exact same spot that our MAR address point is found. So we support broader access. Oh, let me go back to that other. So we support broader access. The public can access this data through our open data site as well as NC1 map. The town's use of the MAR is through a private AGOL group called Wake MAR Data for Municipalities. And that's the full feature layer data set, including retired and reserved address points, and the reserved street center lines as well. So the town of Holly Springs wanted to use the reserved addresses in their permit system for buildings. So they've been our pilot project for use in this. So they're now using it for their RecTrack, CityWorks, CityView, and New World systems. Joel Conrad, their GIS developer, especially likes the attribute for each point called CSAID, or Customer Service Account ID. So by using the CSAID and the PIN, he's able to link different pieces of information across the systems. So you can see through New World, he can link to Notify and Rubicon as well. So at our office, we're in the midst of that transition from ArcMap to ArcPro tools. And so we've been beta testing the tools that we use to manage this data on our, in our office. We're really looking forward to using this. They seem very well designed and very convenient to use, and I'm sure we'll forget all about how to use the ArcMap tools after a week of using this. So you can, you can see with the panel on the right there, you can see some of the features there. So, and here's some details. So here you can see when the feature type changed from parcel to residential structure. And also, you can see like the exact data set that this address point came from. So this address point was in both the Wake parcel address data and City of Raleigh's solid waste data set. So that can be really useful when you're trying to figure out when you've got an address that's only found in one database. That's something you might want to explore and find out, well, is this really a valid address? Is it one-off? And if it's found in several databases, you know, that gives you a sense of that's probably a useful, valid address. So we have a number of feature types for each address. Basically, buildings are split into residential and non-residential. And this is because we wanted to be able to pull this data out for Luca really easily. And so, as Heather mentioned, we've recently added group quarters. So we're going to be marking those group quarters buildings separately as well. So our future plans, and these are very near future plans, include expanding the connections and get web editing privileges to the towns in Wake County. So in order to do this, this next phase of the MAR development, so Robert Appleby, our software developer, has now merged with New Light Technologies, which is a company out of Washington, D.C. And New Light Technologies will be developing these web tools. We had a demo a couple of weeks ago, and we're really excited about the possibilities with this. This tool is very simple at this point. You can edit an address point, you can add an address point. And you can see where an address point was added. The street segment that it belongs to is highlighted there. So we're going to be helping them develop, you know, what are the tools that we need, you know, to be able to do, say, incremental addresses. If you're putting in new addresses in a new subdivision, you want it to automatically increment by, say, 4 or 6 digits to make that process a lot easier, as well as adding, being able to add subaddresses for apartments or even commercial buildings as well. So our plan is for each town to be able to edit and enter the address points in their jurisdiction. It'll be geofenced. But, you know, this is going to be a process to work this out, to get these tools developed and create the workflow that's going to work for everyone. So with a big project like this, the lessons learned, you know, that's always an important part to think about. So the timeline for getting this address repository in use has stretched out longer than we initially planned. But we have done this with no additional staff and during an era of high development within our counties. And we're also beta testing these tools, which it has its pros and cons. We're able to help direct how the tool should be used, you know, what features should be there, but then we have to test it. So if our developer fixes one part of the tool, we've got to go through and test the entire thing again just to make sure everything still works. So there's a lot of back and forth. And there's also a need for training of users of how to use this data. So, for example, if someone in the permitting department is setting up a permit for an address and it's not in the system, to teach them how they can go and verify that an address is valid or not. So thanks for coming, and if you've got any questions, we'd be glad to answer them. Yes, Sam?
Explain what a data silo is.
A data silo, that's when each department or each agency has their own data set that they're using. So, so there's a lot of duplicate work going on. Say the library system might have data that was just entered freehand, and so people can put in any address, but maybe a permit system is pulling from the parcel data set, and so it's a limited set of addresses. But if you've just got one address, one source of addresses that all of the systems are using, that can eliminate a lot of that duplication. Yes?
In a case where you have like one street center line that has, say, multiple names or aliases, how do you know what to assign that address?
So we do have the ability to alias street names, and we actually don't use that feature that much. We just don't have that many streets that we use it on, but it is something that is available, where you would associate essentially two names with that street segment.
Right, and then the address, does the address point also get multiple names?
Well, I think that would depend on what your addressing policy would say to do in that kind of situation. Most of the ones I've seen, there might be an honorary street name for someone, but it's not used for mailing or building permits and things like that. Yes, Melissa?
Yeah, when you started out, were the smaller municipalities, were they doing their own addressing or just Wake County and Raleigh?
So it's something that has shifted over time. It used to be that each town did their own addressing, and it was done in the planning departments. And what happens frequently is what I call musical chairs with the planners. So they start off in a small town, and then there's a job opening in a little larger town nearby, and so they hop to that job. And so what I started doing, because I was having to, people were not doing addressing for very long, and there would sometimes be errors. And I hated to be constantly calling or contacting them about errors that they had made. And no one wants to hear that. Every time you see my phone number, it's like, oh, she's going to tell me something else I did wrong. So what I started doing, and it's mostly for the Eastern Wake towns, is assisting them with their addressing. Either they do it and I'll review it, or I just do it for them. And so right now, this year we're going to be setting up more formal agreements, so it's very clear of who has what responsibility for that. Right. So, but we do take the addresses that the towns create, and put it in our system. Sometimes it's once a plat is recorded. Other times they send the information to us ahead of time, and we can enter it in reserve status. And then it goes active once the plat, like for a subdivision, once that plat's recorded. Commercial apartments, we usually make active right away, because there might be injuries on a building site or something like that. So thanks for that question. Yes?
How closely does your existing schema align
So this does follow the NINA standard. So the consultants that helped us with this, the original ones were spatial focus, and their specialty is data, address data. They helped write some of the standard for addressing. And so it does follow the addressing standards. And as far as the Esri solution, I don't have experience with it, but what I've seen of it, it doesn't track history. And the history is really useful. You know, if you've got a farmhouse that's been demolished and a subdivision put in, and then, I don't know, 8 years later, census wants to know, where's this address? Is that farmhouse address? Is it a valid address? You can look and see, oh, you click on it, it's retired, it was retired, you know, on X date. And it makes that kind of research a lot faster.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay. Oh, yes. Hey.
Do you have any idea of the rollout for the editing privileges to municipalities?
Okay, that's still fairly early.
Yeah.
We just had a demo of this 2 weeks ago.
Oh, wow.
So it's coming, but, you know, if you're interested in doing some pilot project stuff, let's talk. So, yes.
I have a question. How do you identify fake addresses, and what do you do to combat them?
So I have a great working relationship with our USPS folks. So if someone invents their own address and sticks up a mailbox, I'll get an email, or it used to be a phone call, but now I'll get an email and say, is this a real address? And so then I do some research and I go, no, this isn't. So, you know, part of it is working together with other people. Also, so my fire marshals, they do inspections of buildings, especially commercial. And if they notice an addressing pattern that's not like what I usually do, they'll give me a call or send me an email. We just found one of those about a month ago, where the developer of a mixed-use project had readdressed most of the commercial buildings. And it was with suites A through G sort of thing. Well, okay, if suite B is split up in the future into two, what are you going to put in there between B and C? There are no numbers, there are no letters in between B and C. So we've gotten that straightened out. Yes?
As far as training goes, do you have something internally perhaps that you share online? Do you use maybe Hub for content like that?
So it's my dream to build like this site, like a SharePoint site perhaps, or something where people can go to and see like little videos of how to do things or FAQs, things like that. That's been a dream for several years. It's not off the ground yet. Yes, yes. So far, usually what both Heather and I do is, you know, support people by phone or by email, you know, and answering those specific questions. But, yes. Hi.
The cities to edit, have you thought about branch versioning for the editing? They wouldn't have to edit in the web, they could edit directly in the web.
Yeah, we've got to work out a lot of those details of whether when the towns edit, would it be in like a developmental layer until we look at it and click so that it goes into the active layer. We're in the middle of discussing just how that process will go. Because having non-Wake County employees edit county data, you know, we've got to work through some policies and just figure out the details of that. But City of Raleigh, you know, this is a collaborative project, and so they have the ability to edit the data just in City of Raleigh's jurisdiction. But-
Which again is a good chunk of the addresses, so
Yeah.
it makes sense.
So they've got about half of the addresses, but our data centers are linked, and so that was an easy thing to do to set that up. So,
So did the city of Raleigh and Wake County have different addressing standards when you started this?
no, we had the same consultants and developed the schemas the same. They were identical. It was planned this way so that Raleigh, they just got lucky and got funding for it first. And then once they had funding for the eastern Wake towns that they serve with water and sewer services, that right there really helped pay for a lot of that. So there, in fact, Raleigh Utilities pitched in money to help create the data, for that. And then the county picked up the rest for the unincorporated areas as well as the towns. So, all right. Anything else? All right. Thank you.